to look at Genesis chapter 38. This is Judah and Tamar. That's how they've titled them. So now, as I was looking at Genesis chapter 8, I started seeing the pattern once again repeating itself. For those that do not know what pattern am I talking about, when you look at Moses in the book of Exodus, God told him to erect a tabernacle. Now, that tabernacle consisted of, this will be Holy of Holies. This will be the inner court, right? This will be the outer court. That's the tabernacle that Moses erected when for a priest to present a sacrifice unto God, he needed to move from the outer court all the way to the Holy of Holies. Hopefully, one day we will look at the furniture and the significance of each and every compartment. But for today, as we are looking at Genesis chapter 38, I started thinking about the man himself, Adam. That man is divided into 3 compartments. So this is the spirit, the head segment will be the spirit. And from the head, up until somewhere here, this will be the soul. And then from here, this will be, from there down there, this will be the flesh. The 3 compartments that man is divided in, which are also representative of the tabernacle. So as I was looking at Genesis 38, Judah had 3 sons, you know? So the 3 sons, I would say the first one is Er, and then the second one was Onan, and then Kezib. So each boy represented every segment of the outer court, inner court, Holy of Holies, or the flesh, the soul, and the spirit. As I was looking at Genesis 38, I started seeing the pattern repeat itself. So now, when we study that, when you look at verse 6, it says, Er was a wicked man, and God put him to death. This is after Judah got him a wife, right? Tamar. But when God looked at him, he assessed him, he saw that this is a wicked man, he put him to death. So I started asking myself, what qualifies a person or an individual to be wicked to a point where God would put you to death? So now I started looking at the concept of wickedness. So as I was looking at being wicked, I was led to Exodus 20, both thou shalt not, right? So thou shalt not commit murder. So when you are constantly thinking about murder, that qualifies you as wicked. And Hollywood has made killing, John Wick, has made killing such an afterthought that we do not become stricken in our heart, that we are taking God's image, you know? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Once again, Hollywood has made it in such a way that sexual promiscuity is an afterthought. But it says thou shalt not commit adultery. So now, we can go down the list of thou shalt not. But as I was looking at it, all these are actions. They start with a thought. So now, wickedness, I would say, is constantly thinking of anything that opposes the nature of God. I think that's why with this the firstborn son was put to death, because God says he was wicked. Now, once again, like I said, represents the flesh, the outer court. So the flesh has got no regard for the things of God, and we need to constantly put it to death. Any negotiation with the flesh, you are simply negotiating your demise. That's my take. Right? The moment you entertain the flesh, because it's got no regard for the things of God. And ultimately, we need to work our way up there. Holy of Holies, our spirit man. We need to live in the spirit, operate in the spirit. But once you start negotiating with the flesh, you are making your own demise. So, as I was looking at I've written some few notes, family. So, we will look at the causes of evil thought. What would cause you to constantly think evil thoughts or become wicked? So now, John 13, verse 2 in the Amplified reads as follows. It was during supper when the devil had already put the thoughts of betraying Jesus into the heart of Judas Iscariot. So as I was looking at that, I started asking myself a question. Who is planting thoughts in you? Who's planting thoughts in me? Because here it clearly tells us that the devil planted thoughts in Judas. So your thoughts, who's planting them? And how did he do it with Judas? Because with us, the movies we watch, they are constantly planting thoughts that might make us to constantly think of wicked things. The music we listen to, as I was doing my study, the word music comes from the word muse, which has, what's this, muse, which leads people into thinking or deep absorbed thoughts, you know? So now music has a capability of planting thoughts or making you to think. So the music we listen to, as we continue, well, ask your neighbor, who's planting thoughts in you? So now, the devil already has planned a long time before on attacking us. So now, when you look at Ephesians 6:12, it tells us we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against every principality, rulers of darkness, every power, everything that stands for the devil or with the devil. We wrestle against them, not against flesh and blood. So now we need to be constantly aware that are my thoughts my own, or have they been planted by the rulers of the darkness, by principalities? So we need to stand guard of the thoughts that we have constantly, so that we do not find ourselves being called wicked. Amen? So as we continue, the causes of man thinking in the flesh realm, sinful nature. When you turn to Romans 7 and you read from verse 18, Paul describes the sinful nature which abides in us. I think there's a line that says, the things that I want to do, I do not do. But the things that I do not want to do, I do. Where now the sinful nature is dictating how you behave. So now this could be paralleled with habits, but it goes beyond that. Paul explains that there's another law among my members, which if you are not cognizant of, which you do not take charge of, or as God tells us, put to death, it ends up controlling your thinking, and thinking leads to your actions. So now Paul explains it in Romans 7. I suggest you read it so that you can see the simple nature. Same goes with Galatians 5, from verse 16 to 21. It tells us the fruits of the flesh, what we produce because of our the sinful nature. That's what Paul does when we look at that. So I've said last but not least, our worldly desires. Let's turn to James 1. Verse 14. We'll come back to John. Let's start with James. James 1, 14 to 15 says, if I can find it, as obedient children, that's Peter, sorry. James 1, 14. It says, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticement. Then after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. It gives birth to death. When you turn to John 1, 1 John chapter 2, verse 16, it says, for everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. So now, the moment we've got worldly desires, we lust after the things of the world, we desire the things of the world, it does not come from the Father. That comes from our sinful nature. So now, those things will constantly cause us to think of evil things or to be wicked as we continue. So as I was looking at that, I said represents the flesh, but now the second born son of Judah would be Onan. So now as I was studying Onan represents the soul. You want the form of godliness, but you lack the power. So what happened with Onan here? He was also considered, the actions, what he did was considered to be wicked, and God put him to death. So what did he do? What did Onan do when you consider why he was put to death? So now, when died, he had to take over from his brother to be the husband to Tamar. Look at that, the soul supplanting the flesh, taking over, just like Esau, Jacob supplants Esau. That's a discussion for another day. So dies, Onan takes over. But when Onan had to do the deed, they started worshipping. So now, let me put it this way. Sex is an art of worship. What do I mean? When the man is royal priesthood, right? The man is the priest, the woman is the altar. So when they come together, they are worshipping. And then the man sacrifices his semen, sacrifices seed on the altar, and God comes down and blesses the seed, and the child is born. Hopefully, you're not going to be myopic in thinking babies. No, we need to start thinking businesses. We need to start thinking Genesis 1:26, dominion in all those spheres. What is going to give you ideas on how to dominate the land, dominate the sky, dominate the sea. He's going to give you those ideas. So once you worship at the right altar, you worship the right way, then God comes down. He says he inhabits the worships of the saints, right? He inhabits our worship. He comes down and blesses it. So as we continue. So when Onan engaged in this worship with Tamar, instead of sacrificing the seed on the altar, he decided to spill it on the ground. And that God considered to be wicked, and therefore he killed him. So now, I started asking myself, where am I placing my seed? Where am I placing my offering? Is it at any altar? Am I spilling on the floor? Is it at the God-ordained altar? So I started thinking along those lines. And I started questioning what things are dying in my space that I need to start questioning, it could be that I'm not worshiping the right way, or I'm not worshiping God the way He wants me to worship Him. Maybe that's why things are dying in my space. John 10. The thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Look at the pattern once again. Kill, steal, destroy. 3 dimensions. So as we continue, so God put him also to death. Once again, if the soul entertains the things of the flesh, remember that the soul is just a conduit. It's just in between. It gravitates to whoever is strongest, whoever is being fed. If you're constantly feeding the flesh, the soul will gravitate towards a colorful mark. So if you're constantly feeding the flesh, the soul will gravitate to the flesh and do the things of the flesh. But if you're constantly feeding the spirit, the soul will gravitate towards the spirit and do the things of the spirit. For the word of God tells us we serve the law of the Lord with our minds. So now, if you're constantly feeding a spirit man, your mind, hopefully we know that the soul consists of the mind, the will, and emotions. So the mind will gravitate towards the spirit man. Amen. So now, the last child would be Kazim, which now would represent the Holy of Holies. Not much is said about him, except the fact that when Judah realized that my kids are constantly dying when they marry Tamar, so he hid him away and told Tamar, once he's of age, I will bring him to you and you guys can get married. But that did not happen. As you continue down with the story, you will see that did not happen. He hid the last born child, which I would say represents